So we are beginning a 18-month journey or so, or 12 months. We're skipping some months.
But it's over like
Yeah, over a
it's
year,
over.
right?
Yeah.
On the book called the Liber Christo Method, and this is a field manual for spiritual combat.
Yes.
And we're going to be going through different segments each month.
Yes.
But we wanted to start with an initial podcast that kind of goes over the preface of the book,
And the
right?
overview
And some of those
from
things.
chapter one.
Yes, so we are going to go ahead and do that. So we've taken notes. We will expect that you have already read this and hopefully watch this video. Don't hit stop. You have to watch the whole video.
Yes.
Yeah, so the preface, Lisa, kind of starts out with this analogy, and this is carried throughout the book of a ranger
Hmm.
who is in combat.
Yes.
And one of the primary things that it starts out saying in the preface is that simplicity is very important, that there needs to be preparedness and attention to detail,
Yes.
because these are key elements in combat for a ranger and for us in spiritual warfare.
Yes, exactly. Because demons are strictly ordered spirits who follow the rules of engagement as established by God through natural and divine positive law.
And this is a very interesting part as we go through this. Yeah, they cannot violate
The
the way
authority.
God has set
Yes.
them up.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they'll yield or not yield in any particular situation based on three questions. So
Yes. The first one is, does this person requisite
requisite.
I knew you were gonna have to say that. Requisite authority. And the second one is what you can do.
Is there a word there you don't know how to say? What is this? So what is the state of the person? What is their merit of the petitioner? Okay, is this person in a state of grace?
Yes, and then what specifically is the petitioner asking?
Right. So one of the really important things here, okay, is that we need to be participating in the sacraments with
Yes.
the proper disposition.
Yes, living in a state of grace.
That's always a
Very
good thing.
important.
It is in spiritual warfare.
No, it totally is.
Right.
Yes, yes, because then you have more merit.
Yeah, and we need to have a life that's ordered to prayer, okay? Because if we don't have a solid prayer life, it's going to be hard to fight the enemy. And I think more often than not, we see people that believe that they have a prayer life, and they do have a prayer life, but
Mhm.
it's not necessarily an efficacious prayer life with
Yes.
regards to fighting the demons.
Yes. And so this program seeks to do the most important form of deliverance, which is from the guilt and punishment of mortal sin.
Yeah, and one of the great points that it makes right away, Lisa, is something that you love to say, so I will let you say it.
That oh,
I'm pointing it out for you with the mouse, Lisa.
oh yes, no, no, this is very powerful. Uh, strong confession, good confession is stronger than exorcism because the reconciliation is a sacrament and an exorcism is a rite.
Right. So this is important to note. So if you are not going to the sacrament of reconciliation, then maybe this is a good place to start even before you come into this
Oh,
class. Right. Do a good, strong examination of conscience since the last time you went to confession, and then go to confession. And if you haven't been to confession, then I would schedule a one-on-one with a priest and let them know the situation,
mhm.
and then you can go in and sit down and talk with them, because like if we're in a state of mortal sin, it leaves our souls completely unprotected from attacks of the devil, because we're no longer.
In a state of grace.
Yes,
And
and
our relationship with God is severed because of us.
yeah, and so reconciliation, not only does it restore our divine friendship, okay, but it can actually remove demons from a person's body, which would be a good thing, I think.
Yes. And sometimes, well, so anytime we undergo any type of spiritual warfare, it's because God is allowing it. And it's because sometimes God asks a person to suffer because it allows the person to connect with the redemptive power of Calvary, which helps us to conform our will to the will of God. Basically, it's helping the person who's being attacked grow in virtue or holiness in some way.
Yeah, and I think if you want to read an encyclical by St. John Paul II, which is not listed in this book, Salvific Dolores, it is on redemptive suffering. And we all love St. John Paul II. And this is actually a great encyclical on the power of suffering and how it can be redemptive in our lives and in the lives of other people.
Yeah, and the book really will dive into that moving forward, that offering our suffering for redemption.
So, as we go into the overview in the book now, okay, it talks about slaying your giants. And so they're using David, okay, who defeats Goliath. And
Mhm.
this is a symbolic prefiguring
Mhm.
of Jesus's defeat of the devil on the cross. As usual, Jesus using the most unconventional of methods, right, to defeat a seasoned warrior.
Yes, so David used a slingshot and 5 stones over the giant Goliath, and the 5 stones are symbolic of the 5 wounds of Christ.
That's pretty cool. And so David used the sword of the giant, to behead him, as Jesus used the weapons of the devil to overthrow him. We do the same when we proclaim our Christian faith.
And it's important to note that the demon's first weapon is fear, which is often paralyzing, but it's counteracted by acting in faith, which is exactly what David did.
Yeah, there is no doubt that the devil uses fear on any of a number of levels to get us to not go to Jesus
Right.
and to coward and go hide in a room somewhere.
Yes.
So it talks about the fact that demons are fallen angels
Yes.
and they fell because of their pride and their disobedience.
Yes. And they like to tempt and lure us using our own desires.
That's pretty interesting. Our own, so they take a part of our makeup and the things that we want, and they will use those against us, right? And the demons will quickly move from being a tempter to an accuser, okay, trying to get us on our back foot.
Yes. And the committing a grave sin gives the demon an opportunity to accuse us before God.
Right. And so now, listen, our ability to effectively attack and resist the devil is based on having good self discipline and mortification, body, mind, the whole combination, right?
Yes, yes. And if angels were envious, it would be for 2 reasons, which are Holy Communion and suffering.
Right. So having a penitential posture, right? One of humility, one of wanting forgiveness, right? Out of love of God.
Mhm.
These are critical to us being liberated from the attacks of the devil.
Yes. And so this section of the book shares how David went from shepherd to warrior.
The most unlikely of shepherds,
Yeah.
right? To be
Or
able to do
unlikely of
this.
warriors, right?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Of all the shepherds to be the
Oh, yeah,
one,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To come and do that.
Yes. And so the goal of the demon is to entice and keep us in mortal sin.
Yeah. And what keeps most people enslaved, as we said, is fear, self-reliance, one of
Yeah.
Lisa's favorite words, and a life of sin.
Yes. And we must be people after God's own heart. Our fearlessness must flow from our deep faith in God, just
Yeah.
like David's, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we've got to be aware that often those closest to us are the ones who seek to prevent us from seeking liberation.
Mm,
Isn't that interesting?
yeah.
It's true. Like his own family was kind of putting David down. And
Yes.
if you think about your own family, sometimes those are the places where we have the most difficulty.
Hmm.
What about the stones that David used, Lisa?
Well, they were the smooth stones because they increase accuracy and they are made smooth, what's symbolically by the waters of our baptism.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I
Mhm.
think, and I hear this a lot in spiritual direction. Listen, the path to liberation, it's not easy and it's not quick,
Right.
but our victory lies in right belief and right practice over a period of time as we seek to keep our eyes on Jesus.
Yes. And David called upon the name of the Lord as he was responding to the giant, which is what we are called to do. And there is great power in the Lord's name.
Yeah, so do you believe you have the skills to defeat your enemy, no matter how huge he may seem, and that God will guide your stone? Because there are oftentimes, Lisa, I know we've both talked to people where what they were going through, it just seemed like it was too much to handle.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about learning the rules of engagement.
Well, part of the enemy's strategy is to keep us from knowing the rules of engagement.
So what about the number 12, Lisa?
So it represents the appointive and jurisdictional authority of God, as seen in the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles, and the 12 articles of faith in the Apostles' Creed.
I never really noticed or thought about that before, but that's pretty cool.
Yes.
And so I think our Bishop, Barry Nestout, would agree with this next statement. Most spiritual afflictions can be self delivered through returning to the faith and tapping into the stream of grace.
Yeah.
Living a life of intentionality of the sacraments, being really vested in your prayer life, many things will be warded off just by doing that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then receiving the stream of grace is dependent upon your disposition,
Mhm.
thus the sacraments and the impediments present in your
We
soul.
want to get rid of the impediments,
Yes.
people. It's important for us to identify the accuser, okay, and how he's entered our life,
Hmm.
usually through sin, a lot of times through trauma, frankly, from people I've talked to,
Yeah.
and then oftentimes intentionally or unintentionally through curses or occults.
Mhm. So, in dealing with any vice or spirit, the first step would be to separate yourself from it with an act of the will.
Yeah, an act of the will, and we'll talk about this as we get into the class
Yes.
about the upper registers of our will and our intellect, right?
Yes.
And how the devil seeks to approach those through our appetites.
Yes.
But it's very, very interesting the way this has been laid out and explained. You know, we have to cut ourselves free of any entanglements
Mhm.
by that things we're participating in that are not of God.
Right. So, if a certain situation causes you to sin, then
Don't be
cut that
doing it.
out. That's right.
Exactly.
And then address it directly and cast it away in the name of Jesus Christ and from the authority given by God the Father over your own body and soul. And we'll get into a whole section on power and authority.
A lot of stuff on power and authority.
Yes.
So once a demon or a vice or a defect has been uncovered, we can now reject it, renounce it, and then rebuke it to allow grace to then do its work.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
that's, go ahead.
so I was going to say Saint Gemma, which is this isn't in the book, but Saint Gemma, she was often attacked by the devil, and she would call upon God's grace to continuously rebuke those lies that he would try to tempt her with.
Right. So now we are going to continue on into chapter 1,
Yes.
okay, which is an introduction and the renunciation of evil influences.
Yes. So as Catholics, we believe that each person will get a body back in a glorified form in heaven,
Mhm.
while the damned also suffer bodily torment in hell.
Yeah, Father Rippinger, I was watching one of his videos and he was asked, was during an exorcism, was he ever scared? And he said he didn't know if he would use the word scared, but he said there was a demon that was morphing and you could see the shape of the demon and that Father could see the agony
Uh,
in the demon's face of what it was like to permanently be separated from God and to be
mm,
in hell. He said the thought of being in hell and being like that, that scared him,
yeah.
right? So now we have to, as a reminder, and we should all know this, our base armor, okay, against the devil is always going to be the sacraments,
Yes.
especially reconciliation and the Eucharist.
Yes. And we'll talk about how we need to focus on conforming the body, the will, and the intellect,
Like
like
soldiers,
soldiers,
yeah. Mhm.
to God instead of seeking a quick fix or cessation of pain, which happens by growing in holiness and union with God. Because so often we want to avoid suffering, we want to avoid pain, we want to avoid discomfort,
And we want a quick fix.
and we want a quick fix.
And usually we are depending on ourselves, a lot of self-reliance going
Yes.
on there, and it's never going to be sustainable,
Right.
right? So then there's like inside the wire, okay, and then there's outside the wire. So I think inside the wire is like inside camp of a military base, right?
Hmm.
And so in chapter 1 it begins to talk about ordinary and extraordinary diabolic activity.
Yes. And
So the wire is our perimeter, okay,
yeah.
around our soul. And when the enemy breaches our perimeter, our soul, it's called inside the
Inside the
wire.
wire, yep. And then ordinary diabolic activity includes temptation, which is physical or psychological.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because the devil seduces us through our memory, our imagination, and through our intellect.
Yes, an ordinary activity of the evil one is used to is to
Use a
use the
sensory.
sensory
Yeah,
data presented to us to habituate us in sinfulness in thought, word, and deed.
yeah. And so you may never think about it this way because for the longest time I didn't think about temptation helping me grow in dependency on God or in humility. But actually, that's exactly what it can do if we are
Mhm.
properly focused on God, right? Temptation can actually become the school of humility because we are caused to distrust ourselves due to our weakness and then to rely on God.
Yes. And then the demon can become an instrument of both our sanctification and education.
Putting the demons to good work
That's
for the
right.
right reasons,
That's
right?
right.
So there are four reasons, Lisa, why God lets the devil tempt us. What are those
Yes.
four?
To reveal God's glory, to punish sins, to rebuke a sinner, and to educate a person.
Yeah, those two in the middle are tough, right?
Yes.
You know, that we're continuing to be tempted as a punishment and or to rebuke us. But I think revealing God's glory and educating a person might be sometimes we got to learn the hard way,
Yes.
right? We have to learn
Yes.
reliance on God.
Yes.
The thing about it is God allows all demonic activity for a greater good.
Mhm.
Okay, and there are 6 ways of extraordinary diabolic activity, Lisa.
So these are
What
things,
might they be?
yeah, so these are things we see less often or that are often less seen.
Right.
So physical pain caused
Hmm.
by a demon, possession, obsession, oppression, infestation, and subjugation.
So extraordinary diabolic activity, okay, it's due to original sin
Mhm.
and one's own culpability to include things like,
Superstition, occult practices, secret societies, meditate certain meditation techniques, voodoo, any sort of occult.
yeah, and some of these things you might have done as a child, and
Yes.
these things should still be addressed through prayers
Yes.
that are in this book.
Yes.
Okay, and so we have a little note down here that says that talk about, that's all we've got there. So that's the end of that
Yeah,
then.
so we can just talk about the definitions on which are page 19
19.
and 20 through 25.
Yeah, and I actually think what we should do is just tell them to go through
Yes.
these definitions and to just carefully read them here in the book because a lot of it will help us moving forward, pages
Yes.
19 through 20.
Yeah.
Well, we are super excited that you are going to be joining us for this journey. The classes are going to be 2 hours long. We do expect that everyone will read all of the materials and
And we were going to ask if you could also read ahead because there may be, before each class, because there may be some classes that you'll notice in the book, some chapters are longer and some chapters are shorter. So we may be able to, on the shorter chapters,
right.
continue
So you
forward.
have the schedule. I believe we've already set the
Yeah.
schedule. So be at least 2 months ahead. And so come January, you should have read February and March. And then I would say just stay ahead.
Mhm.
But we are excited to talk to you about your own experiences, your own spiritual life, and for us all to really learn how to fight off right the devil in spiritual warfare. What is the other book I'm reading?
Oh, it is
Dominion.
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 Yes.
This is a larger book. It is way larger book than this. It's by Carl Rippiger, and it is called Dominion.
Mhm.
Okay, it's got like a big Saint Michael the Archangel on the front of
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Highly recommend you read that book
As a supplement.
as a supplement. That book is about 500 pages. So as you are going through this book, you know, over the course of the 15 or 18 months that we're going, um, you know, just read 30 or 40 pages a month of that other book and you will get them both completed.
I
But go ahead.
I did want to say when you are reading this book, ask God to reveal to you what he wants you to take away from it. Like how is God speaking to you and your life and what you may be experiencing through this book?
Yeah, so we want this class to be educational. We want it to be spiritual. We want it to be interactive. And
Yes.
so
So come prepared to discuss.
we're not going to just be teaching, but
Right.
we are going to have notes on everything from the book that we can give you, which summarize all of the points of what we're going over. Any other thoughts from you?
I did, but then I forgot.
That's okay. Well, super excited to see you in January. We hope you enjoyed this video and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.